and welcome to the first ever Adventure Uncovered Film Festival 24-hour film screening with Pause TV. For those of you who are new to Pause TV, this platform allows you, the viewer, to directly support independent film by tipping the filmmaker using the button below. So please give what you can, click in the middle at the end of the film screening and the Q&A today, and please donate generously. Every penny goes to support the production and promotion of independent film. We are delighted to be bringing you an amazing range of incredible films that showcase adventures with purpose, and tonight is no exception. We're kicking off with the amazing Voice Above Water, directed by Dana Frankoff, and Perpetual Plastic, directed by Eric Ebner. And we're going to be joined by both Dana and Eric after the screenings for a Q&A. I've got lots of questions to ask them, so do stick around to hear that as well. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy Voice Above Water.
Tiang demen mula di tengah pasir. Ningohang bunyi ombak. Sing demen kamen hijau-hijau bila. Tiang dot bumi bersih pancara pidan. Nama kakek Iwayan Ngop, berumur 90 tahun. Dari 10 tahun baru belajar mancing. Kak cuma belajar mancing sendiri. Suka peka cuma di pantai saja. Lihat keadaan di laut atau angin atau ombak. Lagi di pantai bagus. Lihat sini. Ada pemandangan baik. Lihat di sana ada pandangan baik. Oh, begini airnya bagus. Coba-coba ke laut. Tiang uli bacang, ngai ter pedidi, ngai kaca pedidi. Nepuk beliu tu lega. Ada takutan, bisa kakia takutan. Nah, ni pidan mancing tu liu ada kunitang. Lelima semua bakat. Payu main bisik bapan dukung tiang nu cenik lagi kelom mau pahit payu bisik. Sekarang nggak ada kunyitnya. Sebab plastik banyak. Wah, ini ikan ini. Oh, plastik. Marah. Jok. Buang lagi. Nah, mancing di atas. Nunang pancing. Baru megleduk ngedong. Amak plastik. Nunang bin plastik. Pasang gedang abu penek plastik tu ke jukung. Abu ke daut dan ke plastik plastik tu tambunang di daut. Yang saya nepuk anak utang-utang plastik ke pasir. Di sini nak wang mencemarkan pasir kata. Morning nyama Jawa teka Pak bang idih ni Pak ngah. Akar abu tiang ke Jawa. Nah mak subuh mekejang berjemak. Mapan itu ada pengolah ni pabrik ni perulang ni. Kamu buat mani lamun tak ada bin di pasir yang je nyemak abu ke daut. Pak nyemak abu mai. Abu kemu ke Jawa. Tiang dot pulau tiang pang kembali cara ini subuh.
Nama saya Men Lamu. Lahir saya bulan di sini. Umur saya tidak tahu bagaimana anak saya tidak masuk. Yang ketemu pekak ring pasir. Nak gagain je ni kesai-sai kita duduk dulu, kadang-kadang mancing, kadang-kadang mesti nyaring ke nak penghidupan ni ke sehari-hari ni ke. Tonlah pekerjaan api balik. Uli gas kenton, gas bumi gas tok ni ke ampun tiang anten. Udang tahun ni ke tenuningin tiang.
Kak kan agama Hindu. Bercara berula dari segala syukur dengan teman-teman diajak mancing sudah mati. Peka sendiri saja tinggal. Jadi tak ada plastik ni, takut kak kamen plastik ni, tahu urung lah kan hasil akan benyah, amah plastik ni ya sing duduk, cucu peka sudah supaya ikut gotong royong. Biar orang lain di Indonesia supaya ikut bersatu gotong royong. Kalau laut ini rusak, peka marah. Itu peka suka. Kalau sudah mati, ya mati. Ini gotong royong, sana ndak gotong royong. Ngambil bisa lagi kembali.
That was the amazing Voice Above Water by Dana Frankoff and Eric Ebner, who are both here today, now joining me. Hi Dana, hi Eric.
Hi. Hey, thanks for having us.
No, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we're all kind of mesmerized, blown away. I'm feeling very relaxed and very zen after watching that beautiful film. What was it like to get the opportunity to spend that time with Wayan and his family?
It was really special. I mean, he is an incredible guy who is doing his part, and especially him being 90 years old and really being an activist at his age and taking this on later in life is pretty inspiring. And I love what you said, that you feel calm and hopeful, because that was our intention in making the film. So glad to know it came through.
Yeah, well, it definitely worked. So thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We've got a few questions to ask you, and I've got so many questions from a kind of film and technical perspective, and then of course from the messaging, this really powerful message around plastic pollution and the solutions to the future. So we're going to dive right in. For everyone who's watching, do remember that on Pause TV we work on a tipping system. So below us right now there's a button saying tip the filmmaker, which is Dana and Eric right here. Please do give generously, give what you can, give what you think the film is worth. If you feel as mesmerized and hopeful as I do, then do translate that into whatever you can tip. It all supports local filmmakers, independent film like this one. So getting back to Wayan then, what an amazing character, what a beautiful family, what a beautiful location. The film itself is shot in a really immersive style. It's very gentle, but it's actually quite confronting in a way, in that you're very much in the life within the household, within the boat of this man and his family. It's an incredible level of access that you had as a filmmaker. Can you talk through how you met Wayan, how you found out about this kind of particular storyline? How long were you filming for? Was this kind of go in, shoot for a day and leave sort of thing, or did you spend time on the island there? Talk us through that access process.
Yeah, so the story developed, I really wanted to do something particular on being hopeful about the ocean and talk to a bunch of nonprofit scientists, different organizations, and 4Ocean told me that they were hiring fishermen to go out into the water and collect plastic because they could no longer fish. And so not only did that represent the problem, it also gave a hopeful solution. So we were lucky enough to work with a Bali production company, Bali Prod, who was incredible. And the DP went out and did a location scout on Nusa Penida and met a couple of these fishermen, and specifically Wayan. And as all of us knew, as soon as we saw the photo and heard about Wayan, that he was our guy. So we were fortunate enough to be able to be invited into his hut, to go out on his boat and just spend some time with him. We actually only shot for 2.5 days, which I think is kind of remarkable. It says a lot about the team that we had. Everyone really brought their A game and made a fantastic film out of it. And we were really specific about what equipment we wanted to use and what shots we wanted to get, since we were on that really tight timeline.
Wow. So you mentioned equipment there. I've seen on your Instagram some of the behind the scenes shots from when you were filming, and it looks like you've got all kinds of different equipment. I know as a filmmaker you have an ARRI camera, you've got drones, of course, you've got some really kind of high powered kit there. Can you talk us through the the budgeting for this film? How much does it cost to make a film like this, and where do you begin getting the funding? Do you get that first, or do you make the film and then try and sell it? Just as an idea, as an independent filmmaker, what's the process? I think it'd be really great for people to understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. This was my first directorial debut, and Eric's done several others, so he can probably speak on a little bit more variation of getting funding, because what I've learned is it's all so different where people are able to get funding from. It's really just however you can get by. For me, I raised up 10 grand and then went to go film it, and then raised the other 10 after. And so people are really surprised, but the whole budget for the film was actually only 25 grand, which is pretty minimal. From talking to people, it sounds like most people need a lot more than that. And I think that has to do with just having a really small, efficient crew. I really wanted to keep it tight. And I think working with a team where you really can get to know each other is kind of special. And everyone kind of takes a place of ownership, which is really great. But yeah, so that was the experience and funding for this film.
Yeah, I think that when you make something like this, you really can't depend, when you make a passion project, you really can't depend on money on the back end funding your film. It's just so really unpredictable. And so you kind of have to go into it with the thought that, it's going to be worth it no matter what. Even if you end up losing a little bit of money, you still are passionate about making it and you're going to make it. We were lucky enough on this one to where we won some prize money as well, which is awesome.
Always helps.
But yeah, it always helps. But it's always the hardest thing in any project is the funding. And it's always just a patchwork of putting things together. So luckily Dana was able to do all that and made it happen. And then since it's come out, it's won a little prize money, which has helped our efforts as well. So
fantastic. And all the more reason why we should be tipping, right, guys? Making sure that the funding comes back around.
Thank you all. Yeah, thanks
so
everyone.
The viewers and the audience, we really are in a position now where we can vote with our view counts, and it's not just about how many people watch it, but we have the ability to directly sponsor and support independent film to make sure that you can go on and create more of these beautiful stories and not have to take so much of that risk that you mentioned there, Eric.
Yeah.
So this was directed by Dana, as you said, your directorial debut, which is amazing. It's phenomenal, beautifully shot piece of work, and the story is just so lovely. You both co-produced it together. So who makes the decisions? What happens when you're on the beach and you've got kind of a creative decision around filming, and how does that work in terms of as a team where you have kind of two producers? Just talk us through the creative teamwork that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, so I brought Eric in to be on location as a producer, and so I did a lot of like the pre-production work, as you call it, and Eric was there as really like the support and backbone, because I was told really great advice to really just be able to focus on directing when you're in the moment. And so Eric was there to make sure all the logistics were running and that we were on time. If we weren't on time, to kind of ping me and kind of give any kind of like whispers in the ear of good advice for just what's going on at that moment, to plus any situation.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think, for the most part, I mean, at the end of the day, Dana is the director. But me having directorial experience, I could say, hey, think about this, or we think about this, or I think we should try this. It was never a time where we really disagreed, but there's also moments where, she's talking to Wyan doing the interview, and I'm thinking about timing, and I'm like, oh, geez, here's a storm coming. We only got 40 minutes, and then we have 10 shots afterwards. So I was just kind of, like a little birdie in the back of her ear, kind of giving her the landscape of things while she's focusing on directing. So it worked out. It was great. It was really fun to, me give her ideas and then see those in the film, and then her ideas that I wouldn't even have thought of that are in the film make it a lot better. So it was fun. It was a really fun experience. And it was crazy. I mean, it was 2.5 days. So it was insane. Like, it was crazy. It was stressful. It was really fun, but it was just, we're running around like crazy, shooting ideas, because you can't really plan, especially like the logistics of the space. You can't really plan some things ahead. So you just have to kind of go off intuition. And so it's really fun. But it definitely, I'm sure she's glad I was there. I'm glad that she was there, to have a few different viewpoints,
Sounds like it all came together in the end and worked out fantastically. It's amazing in 2.5 days, the logistics. I'm really glad you were there, because I can't even imagine as a director myself, as you said, Dana, and like being able to focus on the directing and those creative decisions and those moments with Wyan. You can't be distracted by there's a storm coming, or the lighting conditions, especially as you said, Eric, filming in such a beautiful location, but such a volatile location, because the weather there can change so quickly, and you're filming on the ocean. It must have been quite unpredictable and quite uncertain at times. So yeah, pretty good to have you both there working together. Sounds great. So Dana, you talk about your directing sort of motivation your goal is to be able to tell the emotional stories. You sort of talk about emotion a fair bit, and I guess this kind of goes back to with Wyan. You've explained why you chose Wyan and his family, particularly out of the different fishermen that were mentioned, but why focus on an individual or a family story, a character, when the content of the film is actually about this message of plastic pollution, which is this huge global thing? Why focus specifically on one person, and why focus on emotion rather than the problem itself?
I feel like this will be true for all the films I work on. I find it more relatable. Like, I feel like stories that we share with each other are what we have. They're like the biggest gift that you could give to somebody else. And to really hit a core within someone, sure, you can say the facts of the problem, and most of us probably that are watching these films already know those, but once you kind of really fall in love with a character and you find them relatable and see a part of yourself in them, that's, I think, when people are really motivated to change and really spark an interest. And for why, I mean, everyone that watches the film, first thing they say is like, "Oh my God, I love Wyon," you know? So, and also it feels really great to be able to give his story a spotlight. You know, it's something that could go undetected. He's not looking to get press about what he's doing. He could care less, you know, but if the world can benefit from something like his story and we can share it and offer that, then I'm happy to be the one to just, you know, be able to capture it and send it on its way throughout the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love that you talk about relatability when this is somebody who is, you know, 90 years old, who lives on the other side of the world, that actually most people in the Western world have nothing in common with, and yet we all relate to this man instantly. You know, there's such a commonality amongst humankind that we all want to protect the world for our future, for our children. There's that lovely scene towards the end with the grandchildren that he's now kind of passing the baton on to the next generation is so symbolic and so moving. I love that not only can we relate to him, but then we can get something back from him as well, in that what you're saying is he's not out for fame and fortune. He's not trying to get anything from it. He's just doing the right thing, and we see ourselves in him. And then, in fact, we can better ourselves by saying we need to all be a bit more Wyon, right? So I love that the way that you've captured it, and I think it really is very powerful, tapping into that single human emotion of one person's impact and influence, and how we can all maybe potentially take on that legacy for him. I love how the film ends with this concept of the transition from the past, from his long history as a fisherman. We learn his present, and then we look at the future and his grandchildren taking on this kind of message. So I guess I'd love to kind of finish up on this by asking what you see as the message for the future, in terms of where do we go from here? What do we do once the credits are finished? We walk out of the cinema, or we close our laptop screens. What do we do now that we've seen this film?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. For me, at the end, the last statement that he says is, if I do this and nobody else does this, it'll be useless. And so I want people to kind of leave there thinking, this is something we can do as a group, and together we'll accomplish way more than we can do as individuals. So if people are inspired by his story and take that out of the cinema and into their day-to-day lives about being mindful, and not just, I think everyone's aware of the problem of the plastic pollution in the ocean now, but it's really like, if you choose to be like Wyon and actually just pick up the trash, help the problem. And so I think that's a big part of it, just being mindful about your actions like Wyon is. And then on a larger scale, it's, as individuals, we can only do so much. And at the end of the film, there is a petition with Surfrider that is a federal Break Free from Plastic Act. And so, our government has a lot of say. And so if we are able to really reach out on a larger scale, the research that I've done when making this film shows that, that actually can make a big difference as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think on a personal note, when I started, I thought I was a generally pretty good consumer. I supported these types of issues. I tried to be sustainable in some of my actions, but making this film kind of made me a lot more accountable to these issues. You can't be a part of this film and not, know your stuff and act on your stuff, and one thing that's really helped me in the beginning of researching this stuff was this idea of the big three single-use plastics. And the big three are plastic bags, plastic straws, and plastic bottles. And so those account for a huge amount of the waste that ends up in the ocean. So if we can, choose to cut those three out, and it's kind of simple, that can make a huge difference. Some, depending on where you are in the world, some towns or cities or governments are starting to ban plastic bags. Bali has done that. And saying no to plastic straws and having your own water bottle, just like little things that you can do throughout your day to hopefully make a difference. That's made a big impact on me. And at the end of the day, like, companies are going to trend towards what their consumers do. So if we can put our money where our mouths are, hopefully we can make a difference.
Absolutely. I love that message of small steps, and each of us can do these little things, just like Wayan. Everybody can affect the local area around themselves and hold themselves accountable. I love that you use the word accountability. And I think part of it is owning up to our own accountability. It's very easy for us to blame other people, but to say, hey, I'm part of the problem. I need to change as well, especially as filmmakers. I'm the same in the work that I do with environmental monitoring and with filming. I can't be a hypocrite. So it holds me to a higher level of accountability as well. If I'm about to tell these stories, I need to make sure that I'm, putting my money where my mouth is. I'm kind of living by the example that I'm setting as well. So I love that small steps, and this idea that we sometimes can feel, and I'm guilty of this, feeling overwhelmed by the scale of this. When you hear these 8 million tons and number of billions of straws per day and all of these numbers, and it seems so overwhelming. But the fact that with our individual actions, we are voting, we're making choices that influence, instead of trickle down, it's a trickle up to the producers. These corporate giants do hear it based on their bottom line, right? So we can all have, every penny counts, every action that we take, every small reaction or choice or decision really does have an impact. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I think it's becoming more popular, and this message is becoming almost like trendy. And I think, like, once you see films like this and you hear talks like this, once you know these things, it's hard to unknow them.
That's
so everyone
so
watching,
true.
Everyone watching, now. So we all got to do better.
We've got no excuse now. I think the last kind of 5 or 10 years has been a lot of, guys, plastic pollution's bad, plastic's bad, and we kind of, we know. we all know that. And so now we need this shift in the messaging towards, what do we do about it? What do we do on a big scale, and what do we do on an individual scale? And people knowing then that, that's the first step, is recognizing that it's not right, and then having the tools and the knowledge and the non-judgment as well to help say, I need help, I know what I'm doing is wrong, I need to make some small steps and some small changes, and encouraging people to do whatever they can, rather than punishing everyone or making them feel bad for doing the wrong thing. We need to be encouraging that positive change. Amazing. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
This film, I'm sure, is going to be incredibly popular. It already has been. We've already seen it winning awards all around the world, and as you say, you've won some fantastic prizes. This film, Voice Above Water, is in the Environmental Spotlight category for the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival. It's part of our official selection, so winners will be announced soon. So fingers crossed, everyone. We're really, really proud here at Adventure Uncovered to have this as one of our official selections, because it's such a beautifully shot film, but then such a powerful message as well. But Eric, you've also produced directed a film of your own. So we're now going to watch Perpetual Plastic. I'm going to let Eric actually introduce that, and we'll watch that, and then we're going to come back and chat about that one as well. So Eric, take it away.
Cool. Thanks. I'm really excited to introduce and talk about this film, because it covers the same issue of plastics and single-use plastics in our ocean, but it couldn't be a more different film. It couldn't be a more different perspective. It's like the exact opposite of Voice Above Water in a lot of ways. And so it actually started after Voice Above Water. I was in Indonesia. There was a shutdown because of COVID. Everything was closed. And basically, I had met this installation artist. Her name is Lena Klaus. And she makes installation art from plastic that she finds washed up on the oceans of Bali. In this particular piece, it won first place at the National Geographic Plastic Innovation Challenge. And we basically became friends, and we were stuck. We couldn't leave the country, and we're creatives and we wanted to do something. And so we're like, well, how can we make this happen? So we basically just sourced creatives from around the island and honestly around the world to make this. And it's about her award-winning plastic piece, but it's also about these issues. And, you said after watching Voice Above Water, you felt very zen and you felt very inspired and positive. Well, you might not feel that way after this film. And I think me as a director, it was kind of a response maybe to Voice Above Water. I just wanted to do it differently. I had made something that was happy and inspiring. Maybe I could make something that's a little more triggering, that maybe might not inspire people, but will inspire people, but in a very different kind of way. So as far as I'm pretty sure this is the world premiere. And, this wasn't highly produced like Voice Above Water. It was more, intuition. We just kind of did it and saw what would happen. And we got a custom score from a music artist in England. Our cinematographers are from Spain and Mexico. The editors from America. The data visualization comes from Northern Europe. So just a crazy mix of cultures and ideas to hopefully, push this conversation a little further forward. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, but I guess that's all I got. So please enjoy Perpetual Plastics.
I am here to make life more pleasant, more convenient, more efficient. I will protect you, keep you safe. I will make human life better. I will serve my purpose. But what happens then? Where am I going to end?
There are 8 billion people living on this planet. We all wake up, get dressed, eat, go to work. We make things, we buy and sell things. We desire things, we use and we throw away things. So many things. What happens to all of these things after we use them? Over 24 billion pairs of shoes are sold worldwide every year. One of the most common shoes is the flip-flop. Plastic flip-flops are cheap and fast to produce. They are everywhere. for sure you're going to do flip-flops, okay? And then the kind of flip-flops you want is like this. It's lightweight. I used to make things. I am a trained fashion designer and found myself in a factory mass-producing shoes. Everything that's important to me seemed missing from this scene. I felt sick. Where was the connection? Why are we producing so much? Why are we consuming so many things? I could see the snake biting its own tail right there in the factory. The ever-hungry snake of mass production, creating its own need to consume itself, and by doing so, destroying everything around it. I quit my job. I started to do something that I call curating the beach. It's making rainbows from rubbish, creating something beautiful. But beauty is only the bait. It's not about beauty. It is about responsibility. How do we respond to the world around us? What do we value? What do we waste? I only recognize my power when I'm directly touching the pollution, the dark sides of our throwaway society, the guilt, the powerlessness I feel confronted with the destruction caused by man. I need to get in there with my own two hands, get dirty, sweaty, and physically change that landscape. Only then do I feel I can change things. This is a physical data visualization installed on a beach in Bali. Since the 50s, the unimaginable amount of 8.3 billion metric tons of plastics have been produced globally. What you see here are these statistical numbers translated into a physical art installation. The installation shows the total of plastic that exists in the world today, in shops and homes, buried in landfill, burned, or lost in the ocean. This black section represents all plastic ever produced. Black then fades into different colors and splits up into separate streams. The white stream shows discarded plastics, meaning disposed in landfill or unmanaged in the landscape or ocean. Green is recycled plastics, red incinerated, and blue still in use plastics. The width of each stream is proportional to the statistical number. Where does all of the plastic end up?
I served my purpose. I made human life soft and comfortable. I was conveniently available and I was cheap. But at what cost? My job is finished, but I am still here. Where am I going to end? Maybe that's the wrong question. The right question is, when am I going to end? I am never going to end.
that was Perpetual Plastic, directed by Eric Ebner, who we've just heard from and is still here with us. So, Eric, as you said in the introduction to that, a completely different film to Voice Above Water in its feeling, in its sort of emotions, in the style, and yet very similar in the content, the topic, and with hopefully a similar message. So I might actually bring Dana back in at this point and just start off with asking, you mentioned that, Eric, about Dana's film is very positive, very hopeful. It's sort of got a very beautiful message, and you feel quite warm and hopeful at the end of it. Yours, you said you used the word triggering, and we've seen this a few times with plastic pollution films that have quite abrupt images or quite aggressive images, quite shocking statistics. I would say that there are a lot of films that go far further into the kind of negative and shocking space than Perpetual Plastic does. But I do see what you mean in terms of the difference. So not trying to pit you against each other, but why choose a different approach? Like you said, this was a response to Voice Above Water, which I love. How does one come out of the other? It's almost like the echo in a musical score. Why do something so different?
Well, I think for a few reasons. I think one, Voice Above Water is incredible, and as a team we all killed it, and I think it's just, I'm really so proud of it. And I think it would be, if I try to do the same thing again, with a $0 budget, I just don't think that would be entertaining or would make me happy, So I just think as an artist, like, I was part of this great project. I don't want to do that again. I want to keep growing and changing. And so just to come at it from a different side was really fun for me to think about. And like the challenges and like, how can we do that? But also, I think the artist, Lena, she's been working in these issues for decades, and she's not necessarily incredibly hopeful about the issue. She thinks she's pretty focused on that we need to make change now, or we have no chance. So I think I kind of I took her kind of feeling with it and kind of rolled with it, because that's definitely how she was talking about it, and that's what she wants her work to kind of represent. So yeah, it was just fun at the end of the day, and it was just something that I wanted to challenge myself to do. And luckily the team was all on board. You don't see a lot of these films, I think, especially because it's kind of abstract in the beginning. There's a lot of imagery. You don't know exactly what's going on. You're going through this journey. It's just not something you don't see every day. So it was just fun for us to do, because we knew we weren't going to make money. We knew this wasn't really for our careers. This was just create something to create something. So it was a fun challenge, but it definitely came after we had done this really awesome positive message in Voice Above Water.
Perfect. Firstly, I'm going to interrupt to say it could make money, because we're all going to tip below using the Tip the Filmmaker button, and really give back and support these incredible filmmakers for all the work they're doing. We wouldn't have these beautiful pieces without that risk and that generosity of giving their time to these passion projects. So do please give generously using the button below. But
I sorry, and I interrupt you. I will say that this entire project was just based on trust, and we had a small budget to submit to film festivals. So if you do donate, this will just go back to the entire team or the project. It won't go back to me, because that's just how the project is. So
fantastic. Thank you for that. Yeah, it all goes into funding independent film and supporting the industry as a whole. So Dana, in response to that then, I guess it's really interesting what you say is that, Eric, you kind of picked up on Lena's energy, and I guess, Dana, we very much pick up on Wyan's energy there, and that potentially reflects this kind of positive versus negative. That's a bit too black and white, but you know what I mean, in terms of there are people out there who are really angry about plastic pollution, and they're really frustrated, or they feel like it's all or nothing. And there are people who are a bit more emotional about it, a bit more pragmatic, a bit more hopeful. So Dana, where do you think the balance lies between, how much of our TV scheduling needs to be being kind of beaten with a stick and being told that this problem is terrible and is shocking and scary, and how much of it needs to be beautiful and gentle and hopeful? Where do we draw the balance there?
Yeah, I mean, like Eric said, as documentary filmmakers, it's our job to really tell the story of the subject. So you go into these situations, and I mean, we hadn't met Lyon. We had a photo of him, and he could have been this curmudgeon of a man, like we didn't know. And he just actually was this like amazing, like lovely, happiest 90-year-old you've ever met. And so that really set the tone for the film. Which was nice. But yeah, like it really is our role just to capture this thing that's already existing. So you, and really just rolling with it and bringing light to it. So I think one of the most fun things about documentary filmmaking is not knowing what you're going to get. And then as far as, you know, there is a lot of like, this is what's going on in the world, and it's a little disheartening. And we filmed this right at the beginning of COVID, when, you know, there was a lot of tough things going on in the world for people. And I kind of I was happy to be able to put something out there that balanced out that a little bit. Most of the documentaries you see these days are like, this is the problem and we're doomed, you know, not that Perpetual Plastic was at all like that, but it was nice to be in a place where we could kind of put out something that shed a little bit of light on the situation of like, okay, this is a problem, but hey guys, like this is what we can all do together about it and feel good about it. So
yeah, and it's that keyword together that I think is more collaborative, or it stimulates more collaborative emotions. From what I found from environmental documentary filming of my own, is that if you have these films, I call them the super mega death tornado films, where it's just like the world is burning and everything's on fire and everyone's going to die and it's all your fault. They're very divisive, because then you start blaming each other and pointing the finger, and everybody kind of retreats to their own corner, or they trigger a total shutdown and apathy of, I can't deal with this, especially, as you say, in a world where we also have COVID going on. The last thing we can be thinking about is also, we need a bamboo toothbrush and my plastic bottle is killing all the whales. Eric, I wanted to ask you about the topic of this film, which is Lena's artwork, and this incredible data visualization. And you mentioned the data visualization team that you had as part of your global team. Data viz is this huge growing industry. It's been around for years, but I think it's becoming more publicly recognized now as a boundary between, you have data and science and hard facts at one end, and then beautiful emotive art at the other end. And I guess your film sits slightly towards the data side, and Dana's film is slightly towards the kind of artistic side.
Sure.
So in terms of how you use facts and data, and to what extent, how sparingly do you use them? And just talk us through this process, because obviously the end result, this art piece that won this prize, is proportionally data driven. It's a scientific diagram, but it's a piece of beautiful art that looks incredible from a drone, and you've got these beautiful shots of it. So to what extent did you choose to focus on or not focus on this specific kind of scientific data behind it, and to what extent did you focus on the art?
Well, Lena's been doing this for years, and she's been working with her team, Maurice and Sky, for years. And so they've been kind of experimenting with this intersection of data and art and data and beauty for a long time. But the idea is to, bring people in with the beauty and the art, and then make them aware because of the data. Because like you see these things on Instagram and they just look incredible, especially from a drone, and you just click on it and you're like, yep, what is that all about? And then you start reading the data and you realize, there's so much more. But as far as the filmmaking goes, you don't want to put too much data in a film ever, I don't think. But it's also really interesting, and I kind of geek out on it, and I'm really interested in it. And so I definitely wanted it to be clearly scientific. Like, these people clearly know what they're talking about, and this is real. We wanted to tell a story, but it wasn't storytelling wasn't necessarily the goal of this film. And when she's narrating about the data itself, people might not remember all that, but they're going to remember, that this all represents something, and it is a very impressive, well thought out piece of artwork, and then you find out that it's won these awards. And so you start to take these voices a little more seriously, and then these voices can tell you this is happening quickly. We need to do something to change about it. And hopefully you take it more seriously and can take the action from there.
Absolutely. I think, like you say, I probably don't remember the specific numbers or the facts from the voiceover, certainly, but I do remember the sentence of the snake eating its own tail. And the fact that that was what motivated her, because she saw that happening. It's really powerful emotive visual. And of course you remember the visual at the end. It's such an easier way and a more accessible way of remembering the proportions. I might not remember it's 63% and 22%, but I remember that, you know, the big red and the big white bands are bigger than the green and the blue bands, and it can be that simple, right? So we've seen with Adventure Uncovered, those of you who joined us last year for the film festival will have seen Bryony Benj-Abbott's work. She's an environmental artist working with very abstract pieces to, again, stimulate that interest where you're walking past, you see something, you think, oh, what's that? And then when you dig deeper and you find out more, then you learn about whether it's air pollution or whether it's land use, particular topics that she's focused on. So in a way, I think that this worked in a very similar way, that people watch this film and then maybe go and do some research afterwards, and it gives them a little entry doorway into finding out the facts in a way that they wouldn't get if they were to see a scientific paper headline somewhere. They might not kind of delve as deep. In terms of this type of representation of the facts, I think it's a really nice contrast to a film we had last year by Dan Raven Ellison, who did a film called The UK in 100 Seconds, and he used the film itself as an art medium to show the composition of the UK as a proportion, as a percentage out of 100 in 100 seconds. So farmland or city, you know, for the length of time that the proportion takes up. It's an amazing film. Those of you who watched last year will definitely remember it. It was very impactful. If you haven't seen it, do go and check it out in our archive. But I was interested, Eric, just to see how you found the kind of role of this film, because you're filming the artwork. So the artwork itself has this message. How do you then sort of relay that by adding to this film layer? I mean, I'm sure it's the world's first ever GoPro on a flip-flop, right? That's got to be the first ever footage of the GoPro.
Waiting for my Oscar for that.
Yeah, really innovative journey of this thing. But so how do you, when you're faced with, you know, a piece of art that speaks for itself and has this incredible message and obviously is visually beautiful, how do you kind of do it justice by then making another piece of art about the piece of art, if you see what I mean? Like artception.
It's very meta. No, that was the big challenge. Like, how do you relate this piece of abstract art into our personal lives? And it took a long time. Actually, we had a lot of talks and meetings about it, and Lena actually led us through an exercise, and it was, you know, what if we were a piece of plastic? And one of her favorites is a flip-flop. And, you know, and it was very like hippie for me, I'll say. And it was like, how are we feeling? You know, what is our purpose? What is our emotion? And I remember thinking at the time, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like, why are we doing this? But then, you know, we all wrote down, took notes. And then later we're like, well, how do we relate this film, you know, to people in their regular lives? And we're like, well, we could use a piece of plastic that people use, people, you know, have, and people that discard very easily. And so then eventually, well, that's a flip-flop. And we'd already thought about, you know, what if the flip-flop was a person, or what if flip-flop was a character? And so then it kind of became incorporating this new character into our documentary that ended up being the flip-flop. And all that, you know, thinking that we had done lended itself to that. So we use that flip-flop, something that everyone buys. It breaks really easily. It discarded pretty easily. You don't think about it. And then having that journey connect with that piece of artwork in the end kind of hopefully brings it full circle.
Absolutely.
To see like how you could, not thinking about it, you could contribute to this problem.
And again, like you say, it's a character. It's a very different character than Wayan. I don't know if this flip-flop has a name, but he's a very different character.
It doesn't, actually.
But again, it's about that relatability and about that connection, which then leads us into the artwork. It's beautiful because it makes you feel that you are directly contributing to this artwork, which is beautiful and scary at the same time. So I think it's definitely a very effective kind of prop kind of method to get us into that, rather than just saying, look, here's this artwork, look at it, it's finished piece, you know. So I do love that development of it, and I think it's nice that then Lena has the artwork and then she has the film about it, the kind of the meta layers on there as well. So two very different pieces, but with a lot of similarities around character and authenticity and tying in your emotions, enabling that buy-in, enabling the audience to really feel connected. I love them both, and I'm sure that our audience have really enjoyed them both as well. Final shout out, do please tip the filmmaker using the button below. It's really, really important. Guys, what can you say about the importance of kind of getting this sort of funding from the audience as independent filmmakers with a platform like Pause TV?
Yeah, I am so grateful for Pause TV. I've actually never heard of any type of platform doing this type of work. So that is so appreciative of the filmmakers, and it does make you feel very supported in a world where, you know, it's hard to be an artist, especially in the environmental world where there's not tons of funding. So any help is much appreciated, as feeling like you have that backbone of support.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think by far the number one hardest thing as a filmmaker is funding. Like, it's always the main issue 100% of the time. So to have an avenue where that we could be supported, that would be great. You know, my biggest pet peeve as a filmmaker is when someone comes up to me and like, you know what, you should make a documentary about this. And I'm like, that's great. Can you give me some funding for it? And they're like, oh, well, no, I can't do that. So I'm really excited about the possibility of Pause TV. But thank you guys so much for having us in these two films. You know, I think, like we said, there's space for both of these types of films and filmmaking, and any support that you can give just helps the medium grow.
Totally. Yes. We also get I get as a filmmaker of like, where can I watch your film for free? Which is fantastic, but again, it's kind of like, well, or people say, oh, I loved your film, I ripped it off some site somewhere for free, I stole it, I pirated a version of it. But this is fantastic because it means that people, you know, it is a free viewing service, and people can pay whatever they can afford, which means that it is accessible to everybody, which is fantastic. And Adventure Uncovered is so thrilled to be partnering with Pause for this series, and we're so delighted to have had you both, Dana and Eric, on this episode. Loads more to talk about, I'm sure, but I think we're going to go away and allow those films to wash over us figuratively and metaphorically, and spend some more time thinking about the messages that they've sort of stirred up within us. Do join us next time for the next episode. Do tip your filmmakers. Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you so much, Eric. It's been fantastic talking to you, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks. Bye, everyone.